am not saying that the entire way that the COVID reaction was accurate. It was a scary time, and people made mistakes. Absolutely.
You were scaring people.
Why are you saying that?
Because that was the job of CNN.
Okay.
Was to put the
stop.
chyrons up about
stop.
how many people are dying.
We were trying to we were listening to the leaders in this country.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. So RFK Jr. went on CNN for an interview to call out Dana Bash, CNN, and the mainstream media for all the lies that they told to the American people during COVID. And let's just say it was not a good time for Dana Bash because she tried to paint this false narrative, but RFK Jr. showed up with receipts and completely humiliated Dana Bash and CNN. Let us get into it by starting with this video of RFK Jr. completely destroying Dana Bash. And one thing you have to keep in mind as well is that Dana Bash is trying to cover up for what Anthony Fauci did during COVID, because Fauci even referred Dana Bash in his diary.
Yeah,
you were saying you were yes,
I do. Part of the problem.
No, I wasn't part of the problem.
There was absolute press malpractice. You weren't allowing
Mr. Secretary,
your job is a fierce skepticism toward authority. And
yes,
you weren't doing that. You were beating
My
up
job
on people
is also,
who were dissenting.
No. Okay, you want to sit here and attack me, or do you want to have conversations about public health? I'm not attacking you. I'm asking questions about how to prevent the next pandemic.
Question, and I'll tell you.
That's what I'm trying to do. But I also don't want to use this interview to allow you to say things that aren't entirely true.
So here's the issue that I have with this interview. You have this interviewer, this host, Dana Bash, interviewing a government official, RFK Jr. And what she's saying is that she's not going to allow him to use this interview to essentially say things that aren't necessarily true. And the question that I have is, what is her job? Is her job to actually report, or is her job to censor folks, specifically people that works in the government? And this is the ironic part right here, because RFK Jr. actually called her out for this exact same thing. Watch this.
HHS Secretary, and you are talking about things that lead to vaccine hesitancy in this country, and it is something that causes problems for people when there is not anything.
Let me ask you something. Do you see your job as ending vaccine hesitancy, or do you see your job as telling the truth to the American people?
I see my job as telling the truth, and the truth is that there is study after study after study. It's one of the most studied things out there in science.
You're repeating
and
it like a parrot. You're repeating it like a parrot. I've actually read the science. Let's come back here and debate the science.
I'm not debating this with you.
Of course you won't.
No, because I'm not debating.
All you know how to do is repeat things that people told you and say, trust the experts. That's what you did during COVID. Now we know that Anthony Fauci, who was the expert, was lying about everything, about masks, about social distancing, about natural immunity, about the transmission from the vaccine, about the source of COVID. He was lying, and you were punishing people for not trusting the experts. And now you're rolling out the experts again to talk about something that you have no personal knowledge of.
Okay, well, guess what? That is my job, to talk to people.
Your job is to tell the truth to the American public.
Yes, and my job is to get as much information as I can.
And
what we were doing,
skepticism,
what we were doing in COVID, and still, with regard to these vaccines, is getting the best information, the best science that we can, and putting it out there. And, sir, what you are doing is causing information to be out there that is not accurate.
Who was lying to you?
I completely agree with RFK Jr. because mainstream media's job is to communicate the truth, regardless if they agree with it or not to push a false narrative, not to censor people, not to censor the messenger. Because what mainstream media is doing, they're literally lying to the American people and saying that the messenger is lying. For instance, if the Trump administration, RFK, or one of them, RFK Jr., or one of them should say something, mainstream media, they're going to say they're not going to report on it. And recently, we saw the whole thing where President Trump exposed how illegal immigrants are voting in our elections. How many of these states have illegal immigrants registered to vote? But mainstream media, they did not cover it. They did not air this speech. And the reason that they're giving us as to why they did not is because they're saying President Trump is trying to undermine the elections or lying. But what mainstream media is doing is no different than what they're accusing President Trump of doing. But let us get back to this interview where RFK continues to call out Dana Bash and the mainstream media.
I also don't want to use this interview to allow you to say things that aren't entirely true. You're talking about therapeutics, fine. It is also factually true that the COVID vaccine worked. The COVID vaccine prevented deaths. There is data upon data upon data. Let's talk about the measles, please, because this is something that is happening as we speak. The cases in the U.S.
vaccine protected children?
I think that what I have talked to scientists and doctors
You've talked
about.
to scientists. Can you show me one study
Yes, I can.
that shows that
I can.
children were protected by the COVID vaccine?
I can tell you that
That
there are.
vaccine did more good than harm to children. Can you show me one study that shows that?
I can tell you that when it comes to the vaccine, there have been studies that show that because of vaccine disinformation, there could have been 100 to 200,000 lives in the U.S. saved. But because people didn't get the vaccine, that's why. I'm not saying that it entirely.
You
let
are
me finish.
saying
Let me
nonsense.
finish.
You are saying something that you cannot show me
Okay.
a single study.
I am
that
not
says
saying
that.
nonsense.
You
I
are
am
talking what
Excuse
somebody
me.
told you.
Excuse me.
And you
Let me
cite me the study.
What
study?
No, what
Cite
studies
me
are
the
you
study.
talking about? You're talking about studies that actually don't exist.
It is funny how Dana Bash claimed that she's been talking to experts, but for some reason, she cannot recite one study to push back against RFK Jr. or to defend her argument. And here we have Dana Bash trying to defend Anthony Fauci and trying to shift blame onto President Trump. And what's weird about this is that Anthony Fauci went on Capitol Hill to essentially testify about what happened under COVID, the alleged lies that he told, and he pleaded the fifth over 110 times.
You have been placing nearly all the blame on the COVID pandemic and the way that the U.S. responded to it squarely with Dr. Fauci. But of course, he worked for President Trump. Does President Trump also deserve some of the blame?
Well, President Trump, as you recall, wanted to end the lockdowns. I think the thing that did the most damage to our country was the lockdowns that shut down 3.5 million businesses in our country with no due process, no just compensation. All of our churches closed our schools, and our children are still paying the price for that. And yet we had the worst outcome of any country in the world.
And here we have RFK Jr. continuing to call out CNN for censoring and violating people's rights during COVID. And Dana Bash tried to defend the media and the government at the time violating people's constitutional rights. You just cannot make this up.
We need to protect our constitutional rights. That is the primary obligation
What does
of our
that mean?
country. Well, during COVID, we completely dismantled our constitutional rights. We began censoring people in violation of the First Amendment.
But I'm not, you're saying what not to do. I'm asking what to do. But I want to talk
Well,
about.
that's something to do. That is the number one priority. We protect the Constitution. The Constitution was written.
Forgive me, but you're talking about rights, and I'm asking about a potential public health crisis that is coming. But I do want to
And one of the mistakes we made in the last time was suppressing those rights so people weren't being heard. The doctors who were saying you're doing it wrong were being marginalized and vilified.
Yeah,
and
because again, I really want to move on, but
yeah,
you were saying you were
yes,
I
you were
do.
part of the problem.
No, I wasn't part of the problem.
There was absolute press malpractice. You weren't allowing your
Mr.
job.
Secretary,
your job is a fierce skepticism toward authority. And
yes,
you weren't doing that. You were beating up
My
on
job
people
is also
who were dissenting.
No. Okay, are you want to sit here and attack me, or do you want to have conversations about public health?
Me.
I'm not attacking you. I'm asking questions about how to prevent the next pandemic.
Question and I'll tell you.
That's what I'm trying to do.
But that brings us to the end of this video. Please let me know what you think in the comment section below. Also, please consider liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video.